I never intended to be the last one at the office that night. The quarterly report deadline had pushed everyone to their limits, and I was just fixing the final spreadsheet errors when I heard footsteps approaching my cubicle. Looking up, I saw Mr. Garrett standing there, his suit jacket discarded, tie loosened, and sleeves rolled up to his elbows. "Still here, Alison?" he asked, leaning against my desk. "Just finishing up," I replied, quickly saving my work. He glanced at my screen, then checked his watch, 11:27 p.m. The office was silent except for the distant hum of the cleaning crew. "Actually," he said, his voice dropping slightly, "since you're already here, I need you to stay a bit longer." Something in his tone made me pause, my finger hovering over the power button. When I met his gaze, the look in his eyes wasn't what I expected from my usually professional supervisor. The office was eerily quiet as I hunched over my keyboard, the blue light of my screen casting shadows across my desk. Everyone else had left hours ago, normal people with normal lives who didn't need to prove themselves quite as desperately as I did. I glanced at the time, 9:47 p.m. Another late night, but I was determined to finish the Harrison proposal before morning. My name is Olivia Reed, 27 years old, and I'd been at Lennox Partners for 11 months. The investment firm was known for its cutthroat culture and exceptional bonuses, if you survived long enough to receive one. I was still trying to prove I belonged. I was so engrossed in my spreadsheets that I didn't hear the elevator doors open or the footsteps approaching until a deep voice broke the silence. "Working late again, Olivia?" I nearly jumped out of my skin, spinning around to find Michael Lennox himself standing in the doorway of my cubicle. At 38, Michael was the youngest partner in the firm's history, known for his brilliant investment strategies and impossible standards. His presence after hours was as unexpected as a snowstorm in July. "Mr. Lennox," I stammered, automatically straightening my posture. "I'm just finishing the Harrison proposal for tomorrow's meeting." He moved closer, leaning against my desk with casual confidence that made my small workspace feel suddenly claustrophobic. In his perfectly tailored charcoal suit, he looked as fresh as he had 12 hours earlier when he'd strode through the office issuing commands like a general on a battlefield. "The meeting isn't until 2 p.m., he said, glancing at my screen. "This couldn't wait until morning?" I swallowed hard. I wanted to make sure it was perfect. The projections were trickier than I expected. A hint of a smile touched his lips, an expression so rare that rumors circulated about whether Michael Lennox could actually experience humor. "Dedication," he said, nodding slightly. "Refreshing." The compliment, unexpected from a man who rarely acknowledged junior analysts, made my cheeks warm. I'd been trying to catch his attention professionally for months, volunteering for the most challenging assignments and working hours no one else would consider. "Thank you, sir," I replied, already turning back to my computer. "I'll be finished soon." "Actually," he said, not moving from his perch on my desk, "since you're here, I could use some help with something else." I looked up, surprised. Michael Lennox asking for my help? It was unprecedented. He had a team of senior analysts at his disposal, yet here he was, in my cubicle at nearly 10 p.m. "Of course," I said, trying to sound professionally eager rather than pathetically grateful for his attention. "It might take a while," he warned, checking his watch. "Perhaps several hours." Common sense told me to make an excuse, mention an early morning appointment or simply claim exhaustion after 12 hours at the office. But ambition silenced those practical thoughts. "I'm happy to stay," I heard myself say. Michael's expression shifted slightly, something unreadable flickering in his dark eyes. "Good. Bring your laptop to my office." "And Olivia?" "Yes?" "Stop calling me Mr. Lennox. It's Michael, at least after hours." With that, he turned and walked toward his corner office, leaving me staring after him. His request to use his first name represented I've always been the one who stays late, comes in early, works through lunch. My mother calls it my proving complex, this desperate need to demonstrate my worth through constant, visible effort. But when you grow up watching your single mom work 3 jobs to put you through college, you learn that success is directly proportional to sacrifice. Working at Lennox Partners wasn't my dream job, but it was a necessary stepping stone. Investment analysis might bore me to tears sometimes, but the salary allowed me to chip away at my student loans while building the experience I needed for the career I actually wanted in corporate sustainability consulting. 11 months in, I was halfway to my financial goal. If I could just hold on. My apartment was a shoebox studio in a questionable neighborhood, furnished with thrift store finds and hand-me-downs. The rent consumed nearly half my salary, but the location meant I could walk to work, saving on transportation costs that instead went straight to my loan payments. Every dollar was accounted for in the meticulous budget I maintained. Dating had become a luxury I couldn't afford, not in terms of money, but time and emotional energy. My relationship with Jason had imploded 3 months earlier, after one too many canceled dates and missed anniversaries. "You care more about impressing your boss than building a life with me," he'd said before walking out. He wasn't entirely wrong. And then there was Michael Lennox, the man whose approval I'd been seeking since day one. Michael had built Lennox Partners from nothing after being forced out of his previous firm for being too aggressive. Now he represented everything I thought I wanted professionally: success, respect, influence. Unlike the other partners who inherited wealth and connections, Michael was self-made, rising through determination and strategic brilliance rather than family name. It made him both more approachable and more intimidating. The standards he set seemed impossible, yet he'd met them himself without advantages. His reputation around the office bordered on mythical. Stories circulated about his 18-hour workdays, his photographic memory for financial data, his ruthless dismantling of unprepared presenters. Newer analysts avoided his direct gaze in meetings, while senior staff competed desperately for his approval. I'd been drawn to that intensity from my first interview, when he'd unexpectedly sat in and asked the only questions that truly challenged me. While others cowered, I'd found his directness refreshing, a clarity of purpose that matched my own determination. For 11 months, I'd been trying to recapture his attention. Taking on the projects no one wanted, staying later than necessary, triple-checking every calculation. I told myself it was professional ambition, nothing more. Yet there was something about the rare moments when his eyes met mine across the conference room, a flash of recognition that felt like being truly seen. "He notices everything," Lisa from accounting had warned me during my first week. "The good and the bad. Make sure he sees more of the former." I'd taken her advice to heart, crafting my work presence carefully: competent, diligent, unflappable. I never complained about the workload, never joined the office gossip sessions, never showed anything but absolute commitment. The real Olivia, the one who sketched sustainable building designs in her spare time and stress-baked at 2 a.m., remained firmly outside the office walls. It was exhausting maintaining this perfect professional facade, but it seemed to be working. In recent weeks, Michael had begun assigning me more significant projects, even commenting positively on my analysis of the Martin acquisition. Small victories that kept me going through the punishing hours. What I couldn't admit, even to myself, was how much his rare approval affected me, how a simple good work from Michael Lennox could sustain me through days of mind-numbing spreadsheets and client demands. Now, as I walked toward his corner office with my laptop clutched to my chest, I told myself this late-night assignment was just another opportunity to prove my professional value. Nothing more. The flutter in my stomach was just anxiety about the Harrison proposal, not anticipation of spending time alone with a man whose presence commanded every room he entered. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Lennox Partners occupied the top 2 floors of a downtown high-rise, the kind of prestigious address that reassured wealthy clients their money was in capable hands. The 42nd floor housed the analysts and support staff in an open-concept layout designed to foster collaboration, which really meant allow partners to monitor productivity at a glance. The 43rd floor, accessible only by keycard, contained the partners' offices, glass-walled monuments to success with views that justified their 7-figure bonuses. The firm operated like a well-oiled machine, each person understanding their place in the carefully calibrated hierarchy. At the bottom were the administrative staff, followed by junior analysts like myself, then senior analysts, associates, and finally the 7 partners who occupied the rarefied air of the 43rd floor. Ambition was the oxygen we all breathed. Weekly performance rankings were posted publicly, creating a constant atmosphere of competition. The bottom 10% received performance improvement plans that were essentially countdown clocks to termination. The top performers got bonuses, recognition, and eventually, if they survived long enough, partnership consideration. I'd managed to stay in the top 20% consistently, though never reaching the coveted top 5% that received personal mentorship from partners. My strategy of working longer hours than anyone else had kept me safe from the dreaded bottom rankings, but hadn't quite distinguished me enough for special attention, until now. Perhaps. As I rode the elevator to the 43rd floor using the temporary access code Michael had given me, I reflected on my position within the complex social ecosystem of Lennox partners. Lisa from accounting had become something of a friend, though alliance might be a more accurate description of our relationship. We protected each other from office politics when possible, shared warnings about particularly volatile partners, and occasionally grabbed quick lunches when our schedules aligned. Be careful around Lennox, she'd warned me last week over sad desk salads. He's been through 3 executive assistants this year. The man has impossibly high standards. That's just professional, I defended, though I knew she meant it as criticism. Professional doesn't make Emily from HR cry in the bathroom, Lisa had countered. Just saying, he can be ruthless when people disappoint him. Then there was Daniel, my unofficial competitor since we'd both started in the same analyst cohort. Where I worked quietly and methodically, Daniel networked aggressively, taking credit wherever possible and carefully positioning himself for visibility. He'd made no secret of his resentment when I'd been assigned the Harrison proposal over him. Burning the midnight oil again, Olivia, he'd mocked earlier today, watching me gather research materials. You know, working twice as long just means you're half as efficient, right? His barb had stung precisely because it reflected my own insecurity. Did I need to work these punishing hours because I wasn't as naturally talented as others? Was I compensating for some fundamental inadequacy through sheer effort? The partners encouraged this competition, of course. Healthy rivalry drives excellence, according to the company handbook. In reality, it created an environment where collaboration was rare and office relationships were viewed primarily through the lens of strategic advantage. Michael Lennox stood somewhat apart from this system while simultaneously epitomizing it. Unlike other partners who delegated most work, Michael remained deeply involved in key accounts, often working alongside the analysts he selected for important projects. His standards exceeded even the firm's demanding norms, but those who met them often advanced rapidly. Rumors about his personal life circulated constantly. Some said he was divorced, others claimed he'd never married, too consumed by work for relationships. A few whispered about affairs with clients or employees, though no one could name names or cite specific incidents. The mystery only enhanced his enigmatic reputation. As the elevator doors opened to the hushed exclusivity of the 43rd floor, I stepped into territory few junior analysts accessed without specific invitation. The space was dramatically different from our cluttered floor below, all sleek surfaces, original artwork, and strategic lighting designed to impress. Michael's office occupied the northeast corner, offering panoramic views of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. As I approached, I could see him standing at the window, phone pressed to his ear, his posture radiating the intensity that had become synonymous with his name. He turned as I reached the doorway, gesturing me in while continuing his conversation. That's unacceptable, James. We discussed this yesterday. No, I need it resolved before market open. Yes, I understand the complications, but that's why we're paid what we are. I stood awkwardly just inside the threshold, unsure where to position myself in this unfamiliar territory. The opulence of the space made me acutely aware of my rumpled blouse and the coffee stain on my sleeve I'd been hiding all day. As Michael ended his call, his expression shifted from irritation to something more neutral as he regarded me. Olivia. Come in. We have work to do. Michael's office was unlike any space I'd seen in the building, minimalist yet luxurious, with furniture that probably cost more than my annual salary. A massive desk dominated one wall, while a seating area with a sleek leather couch and 2 armchairs occupied another corner. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering city below, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Have a seat, Michael said, gesturing toward the seating area rather than the more formal chairs across from his desk. The casual invitation felt significant somehow. I perched on the edge of one armchair, balancing my laptop on my knees. "What project do you need help with?" "The Singapore merger," he replied, loosening his tie as he settled onto the couch. "There are inconsistencies in the valuation models that I can't reconcile." My heart raced. The Singapore merger was the firm's biggest pending deal, worth billions. Senior analysts had been working on it for months. Why would he ask me, a junior analyst, to help? "I've been reviewing their financials since 7, Michael continued, running a hand through his dark hair. The gesture humanized him in a way I'd never seen during office hours. "Something isn't adding up, but I'm too close to it now. I need fresh eyes." This explained his unexpected presence at the office so late. Michael was known for his thoroughness, his refusal to delegate critical analysis. Still, asking for my help specifically was puzzling. "I'd be happy to look," I said, straightening with newfound confidence. "What specifically seems off?" For the next hour, we delved into complex financial models, Michael occasionally moving to sit beside me on the armchair's wide arm to point out particular sections on my screen. Each time he leaned close, I caught the subtle scent of his cologne, something expensive and understated that made it difficult to focus. His sleeve occasionally brushed against my shoulder, sending an unexpected current through me. "Their R&D spending doubled last quarter," I noted, highlighting a section he'd overlooked. "But there's no corresponding product development mentioned in the quarterly report." Michael's eyes narrowed as he studied the figure. "Good catch. That could explain the valuation gap." His approval warmed me more than it should have. I'd received compliments from other superiors before, but Michael's carried weight that made my achievement feel significant. As midnight approached, he ordered food from an upscale restaurant that somehow delivered this late, another perk of his position I assumed. We ate at the small conference table in his office, the city lights providing a dramatic backdrop as we continued discussing the merger. "You've never mentioned your background in international finance," Michael remarked, studying me over his water glass. "Your insights on the Singapore market regulations are surprisingly nuanced." "I did my master's thesis on emerging Asian markets," I explained. "It's not in my official biography because it didn't seem directly relevant to my current position." "You should have mentioned it. We're expanding our Asian portfolio." His gaze was more personal than I'd ever experienced from him, as if seeing me properly for the first time. "You're full of surprises, Olivia Reed." The way he said my full name, slightly emphasizing both parts, felt intimate in the midnight quiet. I felt myself flushing, unsure how to respond to this new dynamic between us. "More wine," he offered, already reaching for the bottle. "I shouldn't," I said, though I made no move to stop him as he refilled my glass. "We still have more files to review." "We do," he agreed, his eyes holding mine a beat longer than necessary. "But sometimes stepping back gives clarity. Tell me about yourself, something not in your personnel file." The request caught me off guard. We'd been maintaining professional conversation despite the unusual setting and hour. This question crossed into personal territory in a way that made me both uneasy and intrigued. "What would you like to know?" I asked cautiously. "Whatever you'd like to share," he replied, leaning back with a smile that transformed his usually serious face. "We've been working together for nearly a year, yet I know almost nothing about you beyond your exceptional attention to detail." Something was shifting between us, the professional boundaries blurring in this late-night isolation. I told myself it was harmless, just two colleagues getting to know each other better. But the flutter in my stomach as his eyes held mine suggested something more complicated was developing. "I collect vintage calculators," I admitted, the wine loosening my usual professional reserve. "The mechanical ones from before digital displays." Michael's eyebrows rose. "That's unexpected. My grandfather was an accountant. He taught me math on them." The memory made me smile. "He said digital calculators made people lazy, that you should feel the numbers as you work them." "I like that philosophy," Michael nodded, seeming genuinely interested. "Feeling the numbers." The conversation flowed more easily after that. I learned that Michael played classical piano, spoke 3 languages, and had grown up in foster care, a detail that surprised me given his polished presentation. The system teaches you to be self-sufficient, he explained when I expressed surprise. There's no safety net, so failure isn't an option. That explains your drive, I said, understanding his reputation for intensity in a new light. What explains yours? He asked, leaning forward slightly. You work harder than analysts with twice your experience. I hesitated and used to discussing personal motivations. Financial necessity, partly. Student loans don't pay themselves. And the other part? His perception unsettled me. I need to prove I belong here. That I earned my place. Imposter syndrome, he nodded. Despite being consistently in the top performance tier. The fact that he knew my ranking shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. You track junior analysts' rankings? I track talent, he corrected. Especially when it's underutilized. Something in his tone made me look up sharply. Am I being underutilized? Criminally so. Michael set down his glass. The Harrison proposal should be handled by someone senior, but I specifically requested you. This revelation stunned me. Why? Because I wanted to see what you'd do with it. Whether you'd approach it conventionally or find the angles others miss. His eyes met mine with unexpected intensity. You didn't disappoint. The compliment warmed me, but confusion lingered. If you think I'm capable of more, why not assign more challenging projects directly? Office politics, he said with a slight grimace. Promoting someone too quickly creates resentment. I needed evidence to justify advancing you faster than usual. The conversation had shifted from personal to professional advancement, but something still felt intimate about it, this discussion of my career trajectory happening at 1 a.m. with wine and city lights. So this is what? A secret audition? I asked, gesturing between us. Not exactly. Michael stood, moving to the window. The Singapore merger analysis was genuine. But I've been watching your work for months, waiting for the right opportunity. I joined him at the window, the city spread below us like a carpet of lights. Opportunity for what? To offer you a position as my direct assistant. The statement hung between us, heavy with implications. Working directly under Michael would advance my career significantly, but also place me in his constant proximity. That's a significant promotion, I said carefully. People would question it. Let them question, he replied, turning to face me. I need someone who thinks differently, who sees what others miss. Someone whose work I can trust implicitly. His gaze held mine, and I suddenly became aware of how close we were standing, the late hour, the empty building around us. Something had changed in our dynamic, the professional lines blurring into something undefined but charged with potential. Take the weekend to consider it, he said, his voice dropping slightly. But know that I want you, Olivia. On my team. The ambiguity in his phrasing wasn't lost on me, nor was the subtle shift in his expression as he held my gaze. When his hand lightly touched my arm, the contact felt electric, inappropriate, and thrilling all at once. I should go, I said, though I made no move to leave. It's very late. Stay, he replied simply. There's more I want to discuss. Time seemed suspended as we stood by the window, the space between us charged with unspoken possibilities. The rational part of my brain screamed warnings about power dynamics, professional boundaries, the career I'd worked so hard to build. But another part, a part one rarely acknowledged, was drawn to the intensity in Michael's eyes. What else is there to discuss? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Michael's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. The position would require us to work closely together. Long hours, travel, complete professional alignment. I understand, I nodded, relieved by the return to business terms. Do you? He stepped closer. Because I need absolute clarity between us. No misunderstandings. The air felt suddenly thick, difficult to breathe. What kind of misunderstandings? The kind that happen when people work together in high-pressure situations, he said carefully. When boundaries become fluid. The implication was clear. He was acknowledging the tension between us, the undercurrent that had been building throughout the evening. I'm not sure what you're suggesting, I said, though I was beginning to understand all too well. Michael studied me for a long moment before speaking. I'm suggesting that we address this attraction directly rather than pretending it doesn't exist. The bluntness of his statement left me momentarily speechless. In the cutthroat world of finance, such directness about personal matters was unprecedented, especially from someone in his position. That would be inappropriate, I managed finally. You're my boss, potentially my direct supervisor. Yes, he acknowledged, which is why we need to decide how to handle it. Ignore it? Act on it? These are conversations most people avoid until situations become untenable. His pragmatic framing was unexpected. This wasn't a clumsy advance but rather a clear-eyed assessment of our circumstances, which somehow made it more disarming. Most companies have policies against relationships between managers and subordinates, I pointed out. Lennox Partners has no such policy, he countered. We evaluate professional conduct, not personal choices. I took a step back, needing physical distance to think clearly. Why are you telling me this now? Tonight? Because I respect you enough to be honest, Michael said. The position I'm offering would put us in constant proximity. If that's going to be a problem, we should address it before making any changes. His honesty was both refreshing and terrifying. Most men in his position would either make a move without discussion or pretend the attraction didn't exist. This forthright acknowledgement left the decision partly in my hands, a power balance I hadn't expected. I need time to think, I said finally. This is complicated. Take the weekend, he nodded. But Olivia? Whatever you decide about the personal aspect, the professional opportunity is real. You've earned it through your work, nothing else. The distinction was important, his assurance that the promotion wasn't contingent on personal involvement. Yet the situation remained fraught with complications. I should go, I said again, this time moving to gather my laptop. Michael didn't try to stop me. Of course. It's late, and you have a lot to consider. As I packed up, he leaned against his desk, watching me with an unreadable expression. For what it's worth, I don't make a habit of this. In 15 years at this firm, I've never had this conversation with an employee. The statement was meant to reassure me of my uniqueness, I supposed, but it only highlighted the exceptional nature of the situation, and the risks involved. At the door, I turned back. The Singapore merger analysis, was that real, or just a pretense to have this conversation? Entirely real, he replied without hesitation. Your insights were valuable and will be incorporated into the final assessment. Somehow, this mattered to me, that my work had genuine value regardless of the personal complications. Good night, Michael, I said, using his first name deliberately, acknowledging the shift in our dynamic. Good night, Olivia. His voice was soft. I'll expect your decision on Monday. As I rode the elevator down to the deserted lobby, my mind whirled with conflicting thoughts. The professional opportunity was extraordinary, the kind that could advance my career by years. But the personal complication threatened everything I'd built. Walking home through the quiet streets, I wondered if I was strong enough to navigate a relationship with such complex power dynamics, or strong enough to turn down both the man and the opportunity he represented. I spent the weekend in a state of inner turmoil, alternating between exhilaration at the career opportunity and anxiety about the personal complications. On Saturday morning, I called the only person I trusted enough to discuss the situation, my college roommate, Zoe, now a corporate attorney specializing in workplace issues. He did what? She exclaimed after I explained the situation. Olivia, that's textbook sexual harassment. It wasn't like that, I defended, surprised by my own reaction. He was respectful about it. Gave me space to decide. Made it clear the promotion wasn't contingent on anything personal. That's what makes it insidious, Zoe argued. He's smart enough to create plausible deniability while still putting you in an impossible position. Her words stirred doubt. Was I misreading the situation? Seeing respect and transparency where there was actually manipulation? The opportunity is real, I insisted. This could advance my career by years. At what cost? Zoe's voice softened. Look, I know how hard you've worked. But power imbalances like this are dangerous, even when both parties enter with good intentions. After we hung up, I paced my tiny apartment, weighing options. The practical side of my brain listed all the reasons to decline the personal aspect while accepting the professional opportunity, if that was even possible at this point. The career advancement. The experience I'd gain. The financial benefits that would help me pay off my loans years earlier, but another part of me couldn't stop thinking about Michael himself. The unexpected vulnerability he'd shown when discussing his foster care background. The genuine interest he'd taken in my thoughts on the Singapore merger. The way his eyes had held mine in the dim light of his office. Was I attracted to him, or just to the power he represented? Was there even a difference? By Sunday night, I'd made multiple pro-con lists, envisioned various scenarios, and still felt no closer to a decision. Sleep eluded me as I tossed in my narrow bed, mind racing with possibilities. If I said yes to everything, the position and the personal relationship, I risked my professional reputation. People would inevitably assume I'd slept my way into the role, regardless of my qualifications. The whispers would follow me throughout my career. If I declined the position entirely, I'd be sacrificing a tremendous opportunity out of fear. I'd remain in the general analyst pool, fighting for meaningful assignments and recognition. If I accepted the professional opportunity but rejected the personal aspect, I'd have to navigate daily proximity to a man I was undeniably attracted to, while maintaining clear boundaries. Could that even work, or would the tension make the situation untenable? By morning, exhaustion had provided a strange clarity. I'd worked too hard to let fear guide my decisions. I would accept the position as Michael's direct assistant, but establish clear boundaries regarding our personal relationship. Professional advancement without compromise. As I dressed for work, selecting my most businesslike outfit, a charcoal pantsuit that conveyed seriousness, I rehearsed what I would say. I'd be direct but respectful, acknowledging the attraction but explaining why acting on it would undermine both our professional goals. The subway ride to the office felt interminable. Each stop brought me closer to a conversation that would define my future at Lennox Partners. My heart pounded as the elevator climbed to the 43rd floor, where I'd been instructed to meet Michael in his office at 8:00 a.m. The early hour meant few people were around to notice my unusual destination. Still, I felt exposed as I walked the hushed hallway to his corner office, my heels echoing against the marble floor. Michael was standing at the window when I entered, silhouetted against the morning light. He turned as the door closed behind me, his expression unreadable. "You've made your decision," he said. Not a question, but an observation. I nodded, gathering my courage to speak the words I'd practiced all weekend. But as our eyes met across the sunlit office, all my carefully prepared sentences evaporated. "I want the position," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I believe I can bring significant value to your team and the firm." Michael nodded, his expression giving nothing away. "And the other matter we discussed?" Here it was, the moment of decision I'd agonized over all weekend. The words I'd rehearsed suddenly seemed inadequate, overly formal for the complexity of the situation. "I think," I began, then stopped, recalibrating. Personal involvement would complicate an already challenging professional dynamic. Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment? Respect? I couldn't tell. "I understand," he said finally. "And I respect your decision." Relief washed through me, followed immediately by an unexpected pang of regret. Had I made the right choice? The practical one, certainly, but standing here in his presence, I questioned whether practicality was what I truly wanted. "The position is still yours," Michael continued, moving to his desk. "You'll start immediately. HR will process the paperwork this morning." "Thank you," I said, unsure whether to be grateful for his professionalism or disappointed by how easily he accepted my rejection. Michael gestured to the chair across from his desk. "All business now. Let's discuss your responsibilities." For the next hour, we reviewed my new role in detail, the accounts I'd manage, the teams I'd oversee, the direct reporting structure. The ease with which we shifted back to professional interaction almost made me question whether I'd imagined the tension between us almost because occasionally, when our eyes met across the desk, I caught glimpses of what might have been, an awareness that hummed beneath the surface of our carefully professional conversation. By mid-morning, we'd established the parameters of my new position, and I was eager to begin the transition. "One last thing," Michael said as I stood to leave. "We're flying to Singapore next week to finalize the merger details. As my assistant, you'll accompany me." The prospect of international travel for the firm's biggest deal was exhilarating. "I'll be prepared." "It's a 16-hour flight," he added, watching my reaction. "And we'll be there for 3 days." The implication was clear: extended time together, away from the office environment, in a situation where the lines between professional and personal hours would inevitably blur. "I understand," I said carefully. "I'll make the necessary arrangements." His smile held a challenge. "We leave Monday. I'll have my travel coordinator contact you with details." I nodded and turned to leave, hyper-aware of his gaze following me to the door. "Olivia," he called as I reached for the handle. I turned back. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right decision. For now." The last 2 words hung in the air between us, laden with meaning. For now. Not a closure but a postponement. My carefully constructed boundaries suddenly felt less certain. The next week passed in a whirlwind of transition. My promotion raised eyebrows, as expected. Daniel's resentment manifested in thinly veiled comments about special assignments and private meetings. Lisa offered cautious congratulations tinged with concern. "Be careful," she whispered as we passed in the hallway. Michael's last assistant transferred to the Chicago office after 3 months. No one knows why. I pushed aside my unease, focusing instead on proving my value. I arrived earlier, stayed later, and mastered the details of Michael's current projects with obsessive thoroughness. If people were going to question how I got the position, I would leave them no room to question whether I deserved it. By Sunday night, as I packed for Singapore, I had almost convinced myself that the attraction between us had been overstated in my mind, a momentary connection exaggerated by late hours and career ambition. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Michael, looking forward to our trip. "Bring something nice for dinner at Raffles." Just a professional courtesy, I told myself. Appropriate information about a business dinner. Yet as I folded a black cocktail dress into my suitcase, I couldn't ignore the flutter of anticipation in my stomach, or what it might mean for the boundaries I'd so carefully established. The Singapore Airlines first-class cabin was like nothing I'd experienced before: private pods with lie-flat seats, gourmet meals, and attentive service that made the 16-hour flight almost pleasant. Seated across the aisle from Michael, I alternated between reviewing merger documents and stealing glances at his profile as he worked. Halfway through the flight, most passengers were sleeping, cabin lights dimmed to a soft glow. Michael closed his laptop and turned toward me. "You should rest," he said. "We hit the ground running tomorrow." "I'm too keyed up," I admitted. "First international business trip." His smile was warm in the dim light. "The first of many. Part of your new role involves significant travel." "I look forward to it," I said honestly. Michael studied me for a moment, then unbuckled his seatbelt. "Come with me. I want to show you something." Curious, I followed him toward the rear of the first-class cabin, where a small lounge area was set up with 2 chairs and a table. A flight attendant immediately appeared. "Mr. Lennox, Ms. Reed. Can I bring you anything?" "2 glasses of the Macallan 25, please," Michael requested, gesturing for me to sit. Once we were alone, he pulled out his tablet. "The Singapore team sent updated projections. I wanted your perspective before we land." For the next hour, we analyzed figures together, heads bent close over the screen. The work was challenging but exhilarating, high-level strategy discussions Michael would typically have with senior partners, not assistants. When I identified a pattern in the production costs that everyone else had missed, his expression was one of genuine admiration. This is why I wanted you on my team, he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. You see things differently. The whiskey and altitude had loosened my usual professional reserve. Is that the only reason? The question hung between us, more direct than I'd intended. Michael's eyes met mine, serious now. No, he admitted. Not the only reason. Neither of us spoke for a moment, the acknowledgement shifting the atmosphere between us. We should get some sleep, I finally said, gathering the papers. Big day tomorrow. Of course. Michael signaled for the flight attendant to clear our glasses. As she took them away, he added quietly, I respect the boundaries you've set, Olivia. I won't cross them unless you want me to. The statement was both reassuring and unsettling, a promise to honor my decision, but also a reminder that the door remained open if I changed my mind. Over the next 2 days in Singapore, we maintained strict professionalism during business hours. In meetings with the merger team, Michael treated me as a valued colleague, soliciting my input and highlighting my contributions. The local executives, taking their cue from him, included me in key discussions despite my junior position. The evenings were more complicated. Dinner at Raffles Hotel blurred the line between business and pleasure, crystal chandeliers, live piano music, and conversation that drifted from merger details to personal interests. When Michael's hand accidentally brushed mine reaching for the wine list, neither of us acknowledged the contact, though neither pulled away immediately either. The third night, our final evening in Singapore, brought unexpected developments. The local team had arranged a private harbor cruise to celebrate the successful negotiations. Under a star-filled sky, with the Singapore skyline glittering across the water, the atmosphere was undeniably romantic despite the business context. As the other executives mingled at the bow, Michael found me at the stern, watching the wake foam behind the yacht. You've impressed everyone, he said, standing close enough that our shoulders almost touched. Particularly Chen from legal. He asked if you were being underutilized as an assistant. I smiled, pleased by the recognition. I'm learning a lot in this role. Are you? Michael turned toward me, his expression thoughtful. Or are you just delaying the inevitable? What do you mean? He gestured between us. The attraction we've both been pretending doesn't exist since we arrived. His directness took my breath away. Before I could respond, a voice called from behind us. Michael. We're about to toast the deal. He held my gaze for a moment longer. We'll continue this conversation back at the hotel. As he walked away, I realized we had entered dangerous territory, a liminal space where professional and personal boundaries were becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. The question was no longer if something would happen between us, but when, and what it would cost us both. The evening ended without Michael and I continuing our conversation. Last-minute negotiations kept the team working until nearly 2 a.m., after which exhaustion took priority over personal discussions. The next day's flight back to New York created a natural pause in the intensity that had been building between us, but rather than diminishing our connection, the physical distance seemed to strengthen it. Michael texted frequently during the weekend, ostensibly about work matters that gradually shifted to personal observations and questions. By Monday morning, we had established a private language of inside jokes and references understood only by us. At the office, we maintained careful professionalism, but our workflow developed an intimacy that transcended ordinary professional relationships. Michael began sharing high-level strategic decisions typically reserved for partners. I found myself finishing his sentences in meetings, anticipating his needs before he expressed them. You two are practically telepathic, remarked Trevor, another partner, after a particularly seamless client presentation. It's uncanny. The comment was innocuous, but the glance that passed between Michael and me was not. Something beyond professional chemistry was developing, despite my initial determination to maintain boundaries. 3 weeks after Singapore, Michael invited me to join him for a client dinner that unexpectedly turned into just the two of us when the client canceled last minute. We should reschedule, I said uncertainly as we stood outside the upscale restaurant, reservation still intact. Why waste a good table? Michael countered. We've earned a celebration. The Westridge deal closed today. The rationalization was thin, but I accepted it willingly. We spent 3 hours over excellent food and wine, conversation flowing effortlessly between work topics and personal revelations. Michael shared stories about his childhood in foster care, the mentors who had changed his trajectory, the marriage that had failed under the weight of his ambition. Investment banking wasn't my first choice, he admitted, surprising me. I wanted to be an architect. Why finance instead? I asked, genuinely curious about this new facet of him. Pragmatism. Architecture was a passion, but finance was a way out of poverty. His expression turned reflective. I don't regret the choice, but sometimes I wonder about the road not taken. It's not too late, I suggested. You've built enough financial security to pursue anything now. His eyes met mine across the table. What about you, Olivia? What road aren't you taking because of pragmatism? The question hit uncomfortably close to my suppressed desire for him, and we both knew it. Before I could formulate a response, his phone rang, a client emergency requiring immediate attention. The interruption released the tension, allowing us to return to safer professional ground. But as he helped me into a taxi later, his hand lingered on mine just a moment longer than necessary. This conversation isn't over, he said quietly. Over the following weeks, our relationship developed in a strange limbo, more than colleagues but officially nothing more. We worked late together almost every night, ordered dinner to his office, and talked about everything from market trends to philosophy. Professionally, we became an extraordinary team, our complementary skills earning recognition throughout the firm. Personally, we maintained the fiction that we were just dedicated colleagues, despite the lingering glances and accidental touches that charged our interactions with unacknowledged desire. The arrangement suited us both in different ways. Michael respected the boundaries I'd established while making it clear they could change at my discretion. I enjoyed the professional advancement and emotional connection without having to confront the complications of a physical relationship with my boss. But as weeks turned into months, the tension between us grew increasingly difficult to ignore. The question wasn't if our carefully maintained boundaries would break, but when, and whether we'd be prepared for the consequences when they did. You're different lately, Lisa observed over our rare lunch together. Happier. More confident. I shrugged, unwilling to examine the source of the change too closely. I'm enjoying the new position. Lisa's knowing smile suggested she suspected there was more to it, but she didn't press further. Well, whatever, or whoever, is responsible, I'm glad to see it. Her words stayed with me as I returned to Michael's office later that day. Was I happier? Undeniably. Was it worth the professional risk and ethical complications? That question was becoming harder to answer objectively as my feelings for Michael deepened beyond physical attraction into something more profound. 4 months into my role as Michael's assistant, we had developed a seamless professional rhythm and an increasingly complicated personal dynamic. The boundaries I'd so carefully established had eroded into a gray area of plausible deniability: late dinners in his office, weekend texts ostensibly about work, conversations that strayed regularly into intimate territory. Nothing explicitly inappropriate had happened, yet everything about our relationship felt charged with possibility. The firm's upcoming holiday party loomed as a particular challenge, our first major social event together since my promotion. You should wear blue, Michael commented casually as we reviewed the quarterly projections in his office. It suits you. The personal observation, dropped into our professional conversation, was typical of how our boundaries had blurred. Is that appropriate advice from a boss to his assistant? I asked, keeping my tone light though the question was serious. Michael's eyes met mine, understanding the deeper question. Probably not. Does that bother you? I'm not sure anymore, I admitted. 4 months ago, I had clear lines. Now everything feels complicated. Life is complicated, he replied. Pretending otherwise just creates different problems. Before I could respond, the door to Michael's office opened without warning. Daniel stood in the doorway, his expression shifting from professional to suspicious as he took in our position, leaning toward each other across the desk, papers forgotten between us. Sorry to interrupt, he said, not sounding sorry at all. HR needs signatures on the Henderson deal team documents. Today. Of course, Michael said smoothly, his professional mask sliding back into place. Olivia, can you handle that? Right away, I replied, gathering my papers while avoiding Daniel's scrutinizing gaze. As I passed Daniel in the doorway, his voice dropped to a whisper. Careful, Olivia. Office romances usually end with only one career intact. Guess which one? The warning, though delivered with malicious satisfaction, struck a nerve. Daniel had verbalized my greatest fear, that regardless of my professional contributions, a relationship with Michael would ultimately define and potentially derail my career. In the HR department, I found Lisa waiting for the same signatures. You look rattled, she observed as I organized the paperwork. Daniel's being Daniel, I deflected. Ah. She nodded knowingly. Still bitter about your promotion. Though the rumors aren't helping. My stomach tightened. What rumors? Lisa looked uncomfortable. You know, about you and Michael. People talk. There's nothing to talk about, I insisted, heat rising to my cheeks despite my attempt at nonchalance. Olivia. Lisa's expression was sympathetic but serious. I've seen how he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching. And vice versa. Maybe nothing's happened yet, but something's developing. Her perception was uncomfortably accurate. We work closely together. That's all. Until midnight nearly every night? With takeout dinners and car services home? Lisa shook her head. The admins notice everything, you know that. Vanessa from the front desk has a running log of when you two leave together. The realization that our interactions were being monitored sent a chill through me. That's invasive and unprofessional. It's self-preservation, Lisa countered. In this environment, information is currency. Just, be careful. If you're going to cross that line, understand what you're risking. I returned to my desk unsettled, the warnings from both Daniel and Lisa weighing on me. Had I been naive to think our growing closeness wasn't obvious to others? That we could maintain this ambiguous relationship without consequences. That evening, I mentioned the encounters to Michael as we worked late again. His reaction surprised me. Let them talk, he said dismissively. Office gossip is inevitable in any workplace. Easy for you to say, I pointed out. You're a partner. I'm the one who'll be labeled as sleeping my way to the top, whether it's true or not. Michael's expression grew serious. Do you regret taking this position? No, I answered honestly. I've learned more in 4 months with you than I would have in years on the general analyst track. But the personal complications make it harder than anticipated, he finished for me. I nodded, relieved he understood without defensiveness. Perhaps we need to be more mindful of appearances, he suggested. Less obvious late nights. Fewer private meetings. The proposed solution was sensible but left me feeling oddly disappointed. Was I ready for more distance between us, even if only for appearance's sake? As I weighed my response, my phone buzzed with a text. Glancing down, I froze. An unknown number had sent a photo of Michael and me at dinner last week, his hand covering mine across the table. The accompanying message was simple: someone should tell HR about this. My hand shaking, I showed the phone to Michael. The anonymous text message changed everything. What had been comfortably ambiguous was suddenly exposed to potential scrutiny. Michael's reaction was immediate and decisive. This is clearly Daniel, he said, examining the message. He's been looking for leverage since your promotion. Shouldn't we be more concerned about the threat? I asked, still rattled by the unexpected attack. It's a bluff, Michael replied confidently. The photo shows nothing explicitly inappropriate. If he goes to HR with only this, he'll look petty and vindictive. His calm analysis helped steady my nerves, but the underlying issue remained. Still, someone is watching us. Documenting our interactions. Michael's expression hardened. I won't be intimidated by office politics, and neither should you. His confidence was both reassuring and concerning. As a partner, he had significantly more protection than I did. Yet his refusal to be cowed by threats aligned with the strength I'd admired in him from the beginning. "What should we do?" I asked, trusting his strategic thinking if not his assessment of my vulnerability. "Nothing," he said firmly. "Changing our behavior validates the implied accusation. We continue as normal, but perhaps with more awareness of public perception." Over the next week, we maintained our professional routines while being more careful about potential surveillance. No more dinners in visible restaurants. No lingering touches that might be photographed. Our late work sessions moved from his glass-walled office to a windowless conference room without security cameras. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very precautions meant to protect my reputation created a more secretive, intimate environment that further blurred the boundaries between us. The holiday party arrived amid this heightened tension. Held at an upscale hotel ballroom, it was the social event of the firm's year: open bar, gourmet food, and mandatory attendance for all staff. Partners traditionally brought spouses or significant others, while junior staff came alone or with dates who remained awkwardly on the periphery of industry conversations. Michael arrived with a woman I recognized from firm photos as his sister, Susan. The choice seemed deliberately neutral, fulfilling the expectation to bring a plus one without suggesting romantic involvement with anyone. I came alone, wearing a navy blue dress that recalled Michael's casual suggestion weeks earlier. When our eyes met across the crowded room, his appreciative glance confirmed he'd noticed the reference. Throughout the evening, we maintained professional distance, interacting briefly in group settings but never alone. The performance was flawless, cordial but not overly familiar, exactly how a partner and his assistant should behave at a company function. Yet beneath this careful choreography ran an undercurrent of awareness that made every glance feel like a private communication. Across a room full of colleagues, I could sense when his attention turned to me, could feel his gaze like a physical touch. "You and Michael have mastered the art of public indifference," observed Lisa as we stood by the dessert table. "Almost too perfectly." "I don't know what you mean," I replied, selecting a chocolate-covered strawberry to avoid meeting her eyes. "The complete lack of interaction is as telling as too much," she said. "Natural behavior would include some normal conversation." Before I could respond, Daniel approached, his smile sharpened by alcohol and ambition. "Olivia. Just the person I wanted to see." His overly loud greeting drew attention from nearby colleagues. "Having a good evening, Daniel?" I asked neutrally. "Fascinating evening," he replied, leaning closer than necessary. "Especially watching you and Michael perform this elaborate dance of pretending you're just colleagues. Very entertaining." "We are colleagues," I said firmly, acutely aware of others listening. Daniel's laugh held no humor. "Right. Colleagues who work alone together until midnight. Who take private trips to Singapore. Who look at each other like, 'That's enough, Daniel.'" Michael's voice cut through the conversation as he appeared beside me, his expression pleasant but his eyes cold. "You've had too much to drink. I've called you a car." Daniel's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Always protecting your favorite, aren't you, Michael? I wonder why that is." The confrontation had drawn a small crowd now, colleagues pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. "I protect talented members of my team from harassment," Michael replied evenly. "Which is what this conversation is becoming." Security appeared with perfect timing, escorting a protesting Daniel toward the exit. As the spectacle ended, conversations resumed, but I could feel speculative glances following both Michael and me. "I'm sorry about that," Michael said quietly, maintaining a professional distance as we stood among our colleagues. "Daniel's behavior was inappropriate." "It's not your fault," I replied, equally careful. "But his accusations didn't occur in a vacuum. People are talking." Michael's eyes met mine, serious now. "Meet me on the terrace in 5 minutes. We need to make some decisions." As he walked away, I realized we had reached a crossroads. Whatever happened next would determine not just our relationship, but my entire professional future at Lennox Partners. The hotel terrace was mercifully empty, other party guests deterred by the December chill. I found Michael standing by the stone railing, the city lights spread below him like a glittering carpet. He turned as I approached, his expression more serious than I'd ever seen it. Daniel's behavior tonight crossed a line, he began without preamble. But he's also created a situation we can no longer ignore. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? The firm has strict policies about harassment and hostile work environments. HR will investigate his accusations as protocol requires. Michael's professional tone felt jarring after months of increasing intimacy. They'll question both of us. Others too, most likely. The implications hit me like ice water. Our carefully maintained ambiguity would be subjected to official scrutiny. What do we tell them? The truth, he said simply. That we've maintained a professional relationship while developing a personal connection that has never crossed appropriate boundaries. I raised an eyebrow at this careful framing. Is that really the truth, Michael? He held my gaze. Technically, yes. We've never acted on our attraction in any way that violates company policy. The legalistic answer frustrated me. But the intent has been there. The feelings are real, even if we haven't. I trailed off, unable to articulate exactly what we hadn't done. Feelings aren't against policy, Michael pointed out. Actions are. So we continue this charade? The words came out sharper than intended. Pretending we're just colleagues while everyone speculates? Michael's expression shifted, hardening slightly. What would you prefer? That I step down as partner? That you transfer departments? Someone's career will be affected if we acknowledge what's developing between us. I've been trying to protect yours. Protect me? I repeated, a new understanding dawning. Is that why you've maintained this limbo? To protect my career? Partly, he admitted. Once we cross that line officially, everything changes. Your work will be questioned, your advancement attributed to our relationship rather than your talents. I've seen it happen before. The revelation that he'd been deliberately holding back out of concern for my professional reputation touched me deeply. Yet it also highlighted the fundamental inequality in our situation. So what's the solution? I asked, wrapping my arms around myself against the winter air. We can't maintain this indefinite ambiguity, especially with HR involved now. Michael was quiet for a long moment, the city noise filling the silence between us. Finally, he spoke. There are two paths forward. We can formally disclose a personal relationship, accept the professional consequences, and see where this leads. Or, I prompted when he hesitated. Or we end whatever this is becoming before it fully develops. Maintain a strictly professional relationship going forward. I could transfer you to another partner's team where your talents would still be recognized. The second option felt like a physical blow. After months of growing closer, the thought of deliberate distance was painful beyond measure. Yet I understood the pragmatism behind it. Which do you want? I asked, needing to hear his preference before revealing my own. Michael's professional mask slipped, allowing me to see the conflict in his eyes. What I want, he said quietly, is you. In my life, not just my office. But I won't ask you to sacrifice your professional reputation for that chance. The raw honesty in his admission broke something open between us. For months we'd been dancing around our feelings, hiding behind professional pretexts and careful boundaries. Now, facing the potential end of both our professional and personal connection, pretense seemed pointless. I need time to think, I said finally. This decision affects my entire career, my future. Michael nodded, understanding in his eyes. Take the weekend. But Olivia? Whatever you decide, know that working with you these past months has been the highlight of my professional career. Even if we go our separate ways, that won't change. As I turned to leave, he reached for my hand, stopping me. One more thing. I'm sorry I put you in this position. You deserved better. His apology, sincere and unexpected, stayed with me as I left the party, uncertain what Monday would bring. Monday morning arrived with grim inevitability. I'd spent the weekend weighing options, making lists, and trying to reconcile my professional ambitions with my personal desires. By dawn, I'd made my decision, though I felt no certainty it was the right one. The HR email awaiting me was expected. Please attend a confidential meeting at 10 a.m. regarding workplace conduct concerns. What I hadn't anticipated was the second email from Clark Stevens, the firm's managing partner. Ms. Reed, please come to my office immediately. Clark Stevens rarely interacted with anyone below partner level. Being summoned to his office could only mean the situation had escalated beyond Michael's prediction. My stomach nodded as I rode the elevator to the executive floor, mentally rehearsing my responses to potential questions. Clark's assistant ushered me in without preamble. Inside, I found not just Clark but the entire partnership committee, 7 senior partners including Michael, whose face remained carefully neutral as our eyes met briefly. Ms. Reed, Clark began, his tone formal. Thank you for joining us. Please, sit down. I took the single chair facing the semicircle of partners, feeling like a defendant before a tribunal. Clark shuffled some papers, then looked up at me with surprising kindness. Ms. Reed, are you familiar with the firm's policy on workplace relationships? Yes, sir, I replied steadily. Relationships between employees must be disclosed if they create potential conflicts of interest, particularly in supervisor-subordinate situations. Clark nodded. And are you currently in a relationship with Michael Lennox? The direct question demanded a direct answer. I looked at Michael, whose expression gave nothing away, then back to Clark. No, sir. We have a close professional relationship but have not crossed appropriate boundaries. I see. Clark exchanged glances with the other partners. That statement contradicts information we've received. Daniel Berg has submitted evidence suggesting otherwise, including photographs and witness statements. My heart sank. Daniel had been more thorough than we'd realized. May I ask what specifically I'm being accused of? Using a personal relationship with Mr. Lennox to gain unfair professional advantages, Clark replied bluntly. Mr. Berg claims your promotion to Michael's assistant was based on factors other than merit. Anger flared through me, burning away my anxiety. That accusation is not only false but insulting to both my professional capabilities and Mr. Lennox's judgment. What is your explanation for these photographs? Clark slid several images across the table, Michael and me at dinner, standing close on the Singapore yacht, leaving the office together late at night. I took a deep breath. Mr. Lennox and I have developed a friendship alongside our professional relationship. Nothing in those images shows inappropriate conduct, only colleagues who respect and enjoy each other's company. And the late nights alone together? The private dinners, pressed another partner. We work demanding hours on complex projects, I replied. Meals and late evenings are sometimes necessary. The questioning continued for nearly 20 minutes, increasingly hostile as the partners probed for inconsistencies in my responses. Throughout, Michael remained silent, his face impassive though I could see tension in his jaw. Finally, Clark leaned back. Ms. Reed, please wait outside while we discuss this matter. In the anteroom, minutes stretched like hours. When the door finally reopened, only Michael emerged. Walk with me, he said quietly. We moved silently to an empty conference room. Once inside, Michael's professional facade crumbled. I'm sorry, he said, his voice rough with emotion. They've made their decision. Which is? To avoid the appearance of impropriety, one of us must leave the Singapore merger team. His eyes met mine. I volunteered. The sacrifice stunned me. Michael, no. That's your biggest deal. It's just business, he said, though we both knew it was more than that. But there's something else. Something I didn't expect. My pulse quickened. What? Clark suggested I take a sabbatical. 6 months, effective immediately. Michael's expression was difficult to read. He thinks it would allow the situation to cool down and give you space to establish yourself independently. The implications were clear. The partnership committee believed the rumors but were offering a face-saving solution rather than termination. What did you say? I asked quietly. I said I'd consider it, pending one conversation. His eyes held mine. With you. 6 months later, I stood in my new office on the 43rd floor, arranging the few personal items I allowed myself at work. Senior analyst was several steps below my previous position as Michael's assistant, but it came with greater independence and legitimacy, qualities I'd decided were worth the apparent demotion. The door opened without a knock, and Lisa entered with a small plant. "Office warming gift," she said, placing it on my windowsill. "Every new space needs something living." I smiled gratefully. "Thanks for your support these past months." "It hasn't been easy." "You've handled it with grace," she replied. "Not many people would have chosen the harder path." The harder path had begun the day Michael and I made our decision. Rather than continuing our ambiguous relationship or formalizing it as some might have expected, we'd chosen a third option: complete professional separation while we both reassessed what we truly wanted. Michael had taken the suggested sabbatical, using the time to travel and, I'd heard, finally explore his long-abandoned interest in architecture. I had requested reassignment to the general analyst pool, determined to rebuild my reputation based solely on my work. The firm had been surprisingly accommodating, perhaps relieved to avoid potential scandal. Daniel had been transferred to the Chicago office after several other employees reported his pattern of harassment and intimidation. The Singapore merger had proceeded successfully under another partner's guidance, and I had discovered something unexpected: I was more than capable of thriving without Michael's mentorship or protection. My analysis of the Brazilian market expansion had earned recognition from the entire partnership committee. My client relationships had strengthened. My confidence had grown. "Have you heard from him?" Lisa asked, breaking into my thoughts. "Not directly," I answered honestly. The firm's terms were clear: no contact during the sabbatical. "His 6 months ended last week," she pointed out. "The partners' meeting this morning was about his return." The news sent an unexpected flutter through me. I'd carefully avoided tracking Michael's sabbatical timeline, part of my effort to focus entirely on my own path. "I didn't know," I said, arranging files on my new desk to hide my reaction. Lisa smiled knowingly but didn't press further. "The welcome back reception is at 6. Senior analysts are invited." After she left, I stood by the window, contemplating the skyline view so similar to the one from Michael's office where our complicated relationship had begun. How would I feel seeing him again? How would he look at me, now that I'd chosen independence over connection with him? The questions lingered as I entered the reception that evening. Partners and senior staff mingled over champagne and canapés, the atmosphere celebratory. I accepted a glass from a passing waiter and positioned myself near the edge of the gathering, professional but not eager. The room quieted as Clark Stevens tapped his glass. "We're delighted to welcome back Michael Lennox from his sabbatical. Michael has shared some exciting news about his future plans, which he'd like to announce himself." Michael stepped forward, looking more relaxed and tan than I remembered. His eyes scanned the room, pausing briefly when they found mine. "Thank you for the warm welcome," he began. "My time away has been illuminating in ways I hadn't expected. It's given me perspective on what truly matters, professionally and personally." He paused, again glancing in my direction. "After much reflection, I've decided to step down as partner at Lennox Partners." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Michael raised his hand for silence. "I'll be transitioning to a consulting role while pursuing a master's degree in architectural design, a passion I've neglected too long." His smile was genuine, his expression lighter than I'd ever seen it. "Some might call it a midlife crisis. I call it course correction." As the reception continued, Michael made his way gradually through the crowd toward me. When he finally stood before me, neither of us spoke for a moment. "Congratulations on the promotion," he said finally. "Senior analyst in just 6 months. Impressive." "Congratulations on your course correction," I replied. "It suits you." He smiled, and for the first time since we'd met, I saw him without the weight of the firm on his shoulders. "I have another announcement, one I didn't share with the partnership. I've started a small foundation funding architectural education for foster children." The thoughtful initiative touched me deeply. "That's wonderful, Michael." I'd value your input on the investment structure, he said carefully. Perhaps over dinner? As colleagues, or. He paused, whatever we choose to be now. The invitation hung between us, a new beginning, free from the power dynamics that had complicated our past. Whatever developed between us now would be a choice between equals, not a risk to either of our careers. I'd like that, I said simply. As we moved to join the others, nothing had been promised beyond dinner and professional collaboration. But for the first time, the path ahead was clear of institutional obstacles and power imbalances. Whatever we became to each other, it would be on our own terms. Sometimes the longest way around is the shortest way home.